Hey folks, just trying to remember how to get rid of the audio here. There we go. Can you guys hear me okay? Great, thank you. Okay, today we had a couple things we wanted to talk about. I think last week we mentioned just going over motion matching again, and that'll cover a bit on one-click retargeting for animations as well. So we'll look at those. Check and make sure. Yep, recording is running. Good. So I'll post the recording for this afterwards as well, so people that want access to it again can. Also on our discussion today will be a little bit about Fab, or what Marketplace was rebranded as. So we'll do that as well. And we'll talk about a collapsible item in a HUD, just as a quick demonstration. I also, in our in Discord here, and I'll probably post it as an announcement in Blackboard as well, a couple of you had asked about having access to the videos after the class ended. And yeah, the videos are up on YouTube. So I sent you a list to, or I'll send a link to a playlist that is videos from the class, but they're not organized in sequential order. I used the Blackboard shell to organize them, so it's an unorganized playlist, but it has the videos from the class as individual items if you're interested. I'll post that as well. It's in Discord now, but I'll also post it up as an announcement. Blackboard. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Fab first. So Fab is what Marketplace was rebranded as. We started the semester with Unreal having Marketplace, and on the Unreal tab here. So this would have been named Marketplace earlier, and now it's rebranded as Fab, and they're making changes to the content, to who has access to it. They've opened some of it up more, or I guess less specifically Unreal. They now have some Unity branded stuff as well. And with the result, they're changing some of the access. So if you haven't logged into Fab, I recommend that you do. And there's usually a one-click button there that lets you get access to all the Megascan material for free going forward. I think you have until the end of December to do that. If you don't do it, not all of the Megascan material will be available. Megascan is a set of models and materials that Epic used to release free under Marketplace, and they've changed the way some of that's licensing. So having logged into fab.com, and you can see I'm logged in here with my account, you'll have a top level scene like this, and Epic was in the habit of releasing free resources every month or so. Used to be 5, looks like they're down to 3, and they have access, or have allowed access to these 3 assets. So if you pick one of them and expand on it, so I had picked this mercenary one as a character, and you can see here there's character, different outfits and stuff, different materials and whatnot, and it is an animatable character that you can use within your games. So I try to make it a habit to get into Fab and download, or at least add to my library, this particular content. So adding stuff to my library makes it available to me in the future. If you choose to download it, it creates what they call a vault on your hard drive and can really consume some space. So let me flip back over to Epic Games here. And if we go in settings, today. Okay, for whatever reason, it's not letting me into settings right now. Downloads tab's working. Within the settings tab is usually the ability to change something called the vault. And when you look in your library setting here, you can see your recent projects and stuff. And then down below that, you will see the assets in your library. So these are all assets that I've grabbed over time, used in different projects, or just have sitting here. When you choose to install these into some of your projects, they get downloaded to a localized copy called this vault. And depending on where your vault is stored, it defaults to being beside your Epic Games install. It can start to consume a fair amount of space. So if you're looking to restrict some of the space, check out the setting for vault under settings, which is not letting me in still. And you may be able to change the location of it and or remove some of the stuff from the vault. So if you get a chance to get onto Fab, there should be, I've already accepted it. Oh, here it is here. Get all Quixel Mega Scans for free. Um, this first time you come in here will be set to um, allow you to claim it or whatever, or claim now, and it's a one-click claim. Claim all the Quixel Mega Scans. So get a chance to get in there and do that. I'll have a look. I see your message there, Gavin. I'll have a look after class. Yes. Okay, so that's a little bit about Fab, just rebranded, and we're actually going to use one of the Fab assets today in our discussion. Actually, we use two. We're going to use the survival character here, and we're going to use the Lyra starter for some game. So I'm going to close these ones. We sort of talked about them, so that's a little bit about Fab. Talked about the playlist. I'll post that. It's already in Discord, but I'll post it up on the shell as well. Don't think there were any other announcements. Now, you may have noticed in the grade book that I have graded the final assignment part 1. Figured you would want that response back. I'm still working on assignment 4. I've got everybody's downloaded. I'm working on those, and I hope to post those by the end of the weekend. That assignment for the Unreal assignment is probably the bigger assignment for us, of course. So getting that finished up for the end of the grade. Reminder that we have access to various projects up here. So we had some of the local multiplayer discussions here. Offline, I had a bit of a network multiplayer discussion with a couple of just as an example. So it's up here. And this Comp 116.7 Week 8 is another one of ours. There's a few repos up here that might prove interesting. This is the link here to the playlist, posted in the chat as well. And this is simply a playlist. It is out of sequence. Right now it's somewhat organized via date, I think it is. So some of the older ones are up here at the front and they don't really fit chronologically. It sort of starts chronologically around the 6th or 7th one. But these are all the videos that are linked in our class notes. that's also in the room chat here, posted in Blackboard. Okay, one of the items I mentioned last week was a collapsible menu item. So let's bring up, I grabbed one of the other projects here. Window. So in here, I grabbed a different project just to demonstrate one of the items with the collapsible item on the HUD and a little bit about the HUD that we probably didn't talk about a lot in detail. It does talk a bit about it in the recordings, but in the actual class, didn't go in a lot of detail. So on this particular menu, we have the pop-up mini map, and we talked about that. And the example I think we used in class was with the mini map opening up a new HUD, which was one way to do it. We're also going to look at an alternative way, which is described here. Checking the recording still working good. So in this project, we have the HUD, and we have a single HUD here. And you can see we have an option for an image here. It's showing up transparent right now. It is the mini map. The rendered target material is not there. So if I play the game, quit, still have the blank material here. You can see the mini map is here. If we take a quick look at the graph details around this button, when the minimap button is pressed, remember in the previous examples we launched another HUD and we tracked the HUD and we moved the widget from the parent, and that was the way we turned the minimap on and off. Here's another way to do it without spawning up that other HUD and keeps everything in a single pane, and that's to use the set visibility. And if you look at the set visibility options, there's one of them here called collapsed. And if you hover over it, not visible and takes up no space in the layout. So it actually collapses it out of the way. That may or may not make a lot of sense. We'll go through and do one more step that may show a little more detail about what's going on. It comes in handy when you're doing things like VR type menus and you want to start collapsing the menu out of the way. So you can make it visible or hidden, but collapsed is the option here, and it just makes it invisible, and it's actually sized down. So pressing the button goes into flip-flop, sets it to visible or invisible. The item starts as visible. So in the on construct, sorry, and I don't want construct, that's showing up. I actually want construct here. So this is like the event begin play, but when this menu is first created, go back into the designer, you can now see that it is there. Pre-construct is like the construction script in our blueprints. So what I actually wanted here was event construct. When this menu was started, I actually want to go in and set that minimap material to collapse so that it's not on, so that when the game starts playing, the HUD is added, the image is turned off here, and I can toggle it on and off, and it's simply collapsing it. Now I've purposely left these a little bit misaligned. You can see this map button is a bit low. Let's have a quick look at some things we can do to fix those up. So I'm going to save and compile this. Go back into the designer. If we start looking at these, we can start wrapping these, and we talked a bit about them, but I could highlight these two, and you can see they're highlighted here. And if we right click on them, I can say wrap with, and I want to wrap them with a horizontal box. Now they're lined up perfectly. I can start adjusting the padding here. So maybe I'm going to pad this 4 pixels. Now if I take these two buttons, I want to make sure I've highlighted the button. See, I've got the text here. I actually want the button and not the text. And I'm going to wrap these two as well. So right clicking, I can wrap with, and again, a horizontal box, and we'll set them to 4. And if I take all the buttons, or all the horizontal boxes, if I take both horizontal boxes here, I can wrap these with a vertical box. And I have to adjust some of the spacing here. And if we go with not photo, we can start adjusting these, cleaning up the look, resize the box, and I'm starting to have things lined up. And if I wanted to, I could even come in and go with this vertical box, wrap it with a horizontal box, size this up, should be able to drop in any map. Got it the wrong way. So now my mini map is showing beside my buttons, and if I come over and play the game, no mini map there, and then when I turn it on, so it's collapsing and restructuring our HUD based on that. And of course, if I wanted it the other way around, I could just take the vertical box here, drag it up. So just another option for sort of multiple menus, and you can actually collapse or make things visible and invisible without actually going to a whole nother uh, widget. This, of course, does load this all the time, so you may or may not want that. But as a quick pop-up, it's nice and easy. You guys can still hear me okay? Good. Kevin. Okay, so I had mentioned this collapsible widget idea just based on a discussion I had with one of you guys earlier on in the couple of weeks ago. So I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. It is another way of doing it other than having multiple nested widgets, user widgets for your menuing system. And a reminder that you should be zipping your projects. If you wanted, you would do a backup of this. I would store it in a different location and give it a date coded, not December anymore, it's or November, it's December. So this would give you a backup of this particular version locally on your system. You should also have some kind of version control on it, but this just gives you an extra sort of snapshot of your project. So I'm not going to let it finish. This is a scratch project for us. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about mostly was motion matching and one-click retargeting. I understand you guys have some work to do with animations with Wallace. So let's start a new project here. I'm sure you guys have seen 5.5 is out by now, and we're sticking with 5.4, so don't do the 5.5. And from Tom and Wallace, it will be sticking with 5.4 for the. Okay, so we're going to start a new demo project here. I'm just going to use a third-person template, and we'll call it demo. Going to leave it pretty blank. We're not going to do much with it. We're going to create the new project. I do have a text file here. It's just sort of the steps that we're going to follow going through here. This is covered in the videos that we've talked about or done previously. So we started a new third-person blank template. Now we're going to go add some components to this. So this is going to be the one that we're going to build into. So the project we're building into is demo. Just from a resource point of view, seeing as I am recording, broadcasting, and running this, I'm going to shut this project down instead of opening two at the same time. And the first thing we're going to do is bring in a couple of characters that we're going to use. So we're going to add a character here, and then we're going to retarget some animations onto that character. So the character we're going to use is that survival character from Fab. So I've already downloaded it into this Scratch project called Blank. Remember I talked about the notion of migrating assets into a Scratch project, doing whatever you needed to do with them, and then migrating just that asset. So in this case, this temporary project has a couple assets. This is the civilian character from Fab, a medieval civilian, I think it's called, and it's rigged and ready to go. And this is the survival character. It's up on Fab. It's not a bad character. It's rigged. It has some. Doesn't have any animations with it, and we're actually going to do some animation one-click retargeting, and then we'll do some motion matching. I'm going to take this asset, and we're going to browse to the asset. I'm going to highlight the asset and go into Asset Actions Migrate. I'm going to take all of these different pieces, which is materials and textures for this character. I'm going to say OK, and we're going to migrate them into the demo. It has to go into the content when you're doing asset migration. So we're going to say select folder, and this should migrate this character into the demo. We're done with this Scratch project, so I'm going to close it, and we're just going to go have a quick peek in demo, and you'll see that we have our character in here again, or our new character is been added to this. So in our content browser, under my characters survivor, we have our character here. And if I was to drag the skeletal mesh out, focus in on him, we now have this character skeletal mesh in our game. So we have the character we're going to use, and in the end, we're actually going to replace our character with this character. So when we're running around, we'll be running around with our survivor character instead of Quinn, and we'll use different animations than what Quinn is using now. We'll use some of the animations from the Lyra starter project. So Unreal has released a number of different projects that they have hundreds of different animations in, partially for the purpose of providing access to the animations. We're going to exit our project here again. And so this was our survival character that we downloaded. And this is the Lyra starter game. So this is a full-on game with quite a variety of options. All kinds of decent examples in it, some pretty advanced stuff, some pretty basic stuff, lots of different stuff. We're going to use it because we're going to harvest some of the animations from it. So it's a shooting game, obviously. There's lots of animations where the players have their hands on weapons and whatnot, but they have a whole category of unarmed animations, and we're going to use those. So a couple of other good sources for animations. Pull up the link here. Is the game animation sample pack here. So I'm just copying the. So this is another good animation pack with quite a variety of animations in it. If you wanted to use, so you get characters jumping, running, flying. I think this one even has some superhero type stuff in it. But we're going to use the Lyra example for our project today. So this again is something that I would have downloaded. It's in my library. When I click it in my library, I create a new project. So I created this Lyra starter project, default name here. So this again is like a scratch project. I've only created it because I want to harvest some material out of it, and the material we want to harvest are the animations. I have buried you guys for a whole bunch of windows. Pull up. It's not seeing anything in chat, so that's good. So this may take a little while to run the first time. There are lots of different. Yeah, you've been buried alive. Yeah, that's okay. I've unburied you. I can see you again. This project may take a little while to load the very first time you load it because there's a fair number of shaders and stuff to compile. But once it's loaded, you can run it and look around. We're not going to. We're going to go straight to the animations and do the asset migration. So in here, and I'll probably send you this text note that I'm following just as a script because it has the path to these animations as characters, heroes, mannequin, animations, locomotion for movement, and then unarmed. So these are a whole bunch of the unarmed animations. So I'm just going to take everything in this folder. Right click on it, go into Asset Actions, Migrate. And if you look through this great big long list, it's not only taking the animations, it's taking the skeletal, the meshes, and a few other pieces. We're going to take it all because we need it all. I'm going to say OK. And then we're going to navigate to demo content because we want it to go into the motion matching demo project into the content folder. This one may take a couple of minutes to migrate. It is a bit larger, but we're not taking all the other material from this particular game asset. So again, that's the process for migrating the assets. Download the assets from Fab. Pick and choose what you want out of the Scratch project and migrate those into your final project as opposed to adding them directly to your. I'm going to close this project now. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so if I was done with the assets, I could move this off to a different drive. I could delete it and blank were just sort of scratch projects, depending on if I planned on reusing them. And now in Demo, if I manually browse this, you would see that we now have under characters, we have heroes and on and on. We have our structure, but if we start the project itself, we'll see that we have that folder structure and those animations in our project. Okay, so let's So it opens up, and here's all of our animations now in our motion match demo. Let's go back to the top here, under content, and we had my characters and we had survivor. We're actually going to create a new player blueprint, and we're going to replace Quinn at some point with this player character blueprint. So we're just going to right click and say blueprint class character, and we're going to say BP underscore survivor character. Opening this up, pocket here at the top. Under the skeletal mesh, we're going to choose our survivor character. Which I am. Okay, Mini, Manny, Quinn. Okay, so our character we need to position properly, and you recall these usually use a -90 because it needs to point positive in the red direction. So I usually use -90 here, and usually ends up being about -89 to move down. But if you wanted to check it for sure, you could go into right, zoom in here, turn off your snapping, and then you could position it. And this will mean if he's floating up here like this, he's going to appear to float above it. And if you do like that, below the bottom of the capsule, it's going to appear as if he's crawling on his knees. We want to line this up with the bottom of the capsule. What our end goal here is to create a new animation blueprint and have our character use that animation blueprint. But for now, we've simply created our character. If we play our game, we still have Quinn running around here. This is just a static mesh we put into view just to eliminate confusion. I'm going to remove it. So we have Quinn in our game here. If I wanted to replace Quinn, we would just go into game mode and we can replace that, and then we can sort of test the functionality as we build out. So at this point, we could probably open our game mode. If we go into third person blueprints, it's third person game mode. We can simply change our default pawn here from BP third person character to BP survivor character. And we have the character here, but not running properly. We don't have any movement controls, and we don't have the camera. Let's go into our survivor character. Let's add the camera. So just on the capsule component, we're going to say add spring arm to attach the camera to. And this is a similar process to what we did with the 2D mini map, where we added a spring arm, but this time we're going to add a camera instead of a scene capture. And we can position it here. We could give it a little offset. I'm going to take the spring arm and rotate it a bit on the Y. Highlight the camera, rotate it on the Y as well. Now we're looking behind the character. Now we still don't have any movement, so let's go into the event graph, and we're simply going to grab and copy the movement input system from existing third-person character. So we'll go into the third-person character, zoom out here a little bit, in its event graph, Control C, and in our survivor character, Control V to paste it, compile and save. So now we have our character in here, and he can run around and jump, although There's no animation. So previous in class, we did an example where we used a blend space and we did the animation with the blend space, and I pointed you to the motion matching piece. So we're just actually going to run through the motion map. So the first thing we need to do is get the animations ready to go. So we have our character now. We just need to create an animation blueprint and configure it for our character. We're going to close the third person. We don't need it. Leave this open. So in our characters folder, my characters rather, Survivor, let's create an animation folder. And this is where we're going to put the animations for the Survivor character, and they're simply going to be the retargeted animations from the Lyra game. So we imported those animations from the Lyra game, and we want to use them on this character. So under characters, heroes, mannequin, animations, locomotion, unarmed, we're going to take the animation sequences, highlight the lot of them. So this is the one-click retargeting. We have a rigged skeletal mesh, that's the Survivor character, and we're going to take all of these animations and map them onto that character in one step. Or as few, they call it one step compared to what it used to be. Retarget animations. And this is the default one that it's using. See, the source is SKM Manny, and we're going to use our Survivor character here. So I can just search here for Survivor. You can now see the two characters, and we can highlight all the different ones we want here. And I'm going to just do a search for unarmed, or filter rather for unarmed. I'm just going to narrow these down. I'm going to take this lot of animations and retarget them for our new character. Actually, before I do that, if I highlight one of them, you can see that it will map the animation. So anyways, what I'm going to do is highlight these unarmed ones. With them highlighted, we're going to say export animations, and it wants to know where we want them. So I want it to go into the my character Survivor animations folder. I'm going to say export. I can overwrite or whatever I want, and it's going to export these animations. And we now have these animations mapped to our character. So if I open this particular one, static pose, figures I'd grab a static pose. Let's grab another one here. So here's the character with the Lyra animations walking forward. Now, in order for motion matching to work, we typically want to have root motion enabled, and we want to have force root bone locked, and usually looping. So we can check these individually, or we can bulk set them. So I'm in the My Character Survivor animations folder, and I'm just going to highlight the lot of these animations. And we're going to use a bulk edit tool. So we're going to right click, And gonna come under, always takes me a minute to find it. Asset actions, retarget animations we did, asset actions, edit selection and property matrix. So it's gonna open all of these in a big matrix. We're gonna highlight a lot of them by Control A selecting them. And in here, we're going to search for root or filter for root. And I just want to make sure that root's enabled on all of them. And force root lock needs to be enabled on all of them. And I generally turn on looping, so we'll turn the loop on here as well. And then we have to remember to do the save. So this is actually making these changes to all those assets for us. Is finished. Again, that was with all the assets selected under asset actions, edit selection in property matrix, and we can edit a whole bunch of actions in once. Okay, so we've been running a few things here. We haven't saved, so I am going to save just to make sure that we have, we crash, we don't lose our work to this point. And again, our character is still not functioning properly yet. We don't have any animation. We haven't created the animation blueprint, and we haven't attached it to the character. So we want to use motion matching for this, and the motion matching system is a system that takes a look at the velocity and trajectory of your character and then chooses which animation to play on its own. And the more animation options you feed it, the more interesting your character movement appears, or the more fluid it appears in some cases. If you only had 2 or 3 animations like we did with the blend space, it's going to look very similar to the blend space. But if you feed it multiple different animations, then it can pick and choose those animations based on the character's trajectory. So in order for this to work, we need the character movement component as part of the character here. And you can see we have this character movement component. We also need to have a trajectory component as well. And in order for that to work, we have to enable a plugin. And we've talked a little bit about plugins when we talked about the HDRI, high dynamic range image, as a backdrop in your environment. So under edit, plugins, and we can search through all these, or we can filter, and we happen to know we want a trajectory. So motion trajectory, it lists it as experimental, new in dimension 5.4, it was in 5.3, so it hasn't gone mainstream yet. So it tells you it's experimental. Do you really want to do this? Yes. Like any plugin, it comes up and says you have to do a restart. We're going to do the restart. We had just saved, so I'm comfortable doing the restart. It's going to come up, bring us back to the plugins menu. We'll close the plugin menu here. Use to open this if it will. So we've got our character open again. And we actually want to add a component here. We're just going to go add. We're going to say trajectory. It's simply added this trajectory component. So this is the part that allows the game engine to watch your player movement and then figure out which animation to apply to it. Now that we've got the trajectory system enabled in the game environment here, we can start to create the motion matching components to build this out. So just a quick recap starting at the top. We migrated in a character We migrated in the skeletal mesh for the survivor character, and we created a blueprint character based on this, and we've updated the game mode to use this particular character. Character has no animation, so they just sort of push around, but we did modify the character so that it had the default movement from the player, third person player. We also went into the Lyra project and migrated the animations from the Lyra project into our motion matching project. And then we one click retargeted all of those animations onto our survivor character, and that's the particular animations. And we used the batch editing to set them all, make sure that root motion was enabled and force root lock was on and looping was. That's the point. I'm going to save this. And we're going to, in the survivor folder here, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to create a motion matching folder, and we'll just put a couple assets in here where we're going to create the assets for motion matching. Motion matching starts with a schema and then a database and then a normalized. So we're going to start with the animation. Now that we have enabled trajectory, we now have this motion matching option. If this motion matching option doesn't appear in your project, it means you haven't enabled the trajectory plugin project. So we're going to create this pose search schema first, and we're going to base it off of our survival character here. So we'll call it PSS pose search schema underscore survivor. In here, there's nothing really to configure. It's telling you that it's using this skeleton, and there are a couple of different things. So it's using this survival skeleton, and if we look under channels, I think it tells you it's using the right and left feet to do a bunch of the motion tracking. So other than creating it and referencing the skeleton, there's nothing to do with that. Most of the magic comes in the pose search database. So we're going to create the item, and then we'll probably have a break, 10-minute break, and then get going again. So under animation, motion matching, we're going to create the pose search database. It takes one argument to start, and it's the schema that we just created, and we're going to call it PSD underscore survivor. I'm going to call it run walk. Opening this up, docking it up here, doing a save all, and just as a reminder to do your backups. Do that, and we will grab a quick 10-minute break. So it's 10 to 1. We'll come back at 1 o'clock, and we will continue talking about the pose search database, getting motion matching working on this character, and then we may even do or add the jumping component back in, because by default it won't do the jump in the first pass. Okay, so 10-minute break. We'll be back at 1 o'clock. Save any questions for right after break, and we can then. Welcome back. Can you guys still hear me? Great, thank you. Okay, any questions so far about sort of our one-click retargeting was one of the main points there. We talked a little bit about Fab though as well, and we showed you that option of sort of collapsing items on the HUD menu, and we lined things up with vertical bounding boxes and horizontal boxes. And the trick with those is it's sometimes easiest to pick the item in the details panel on the left as opposed to trying to pick it on the design panel, and then right click and use the wrap with. Quite a few different things covered in that first hour. If you do think of questions or you're watching this in recording and have questions, do send me a message and I will try and get back to you. Um, Next week is going to be a work session, so we're not talking about anything new. We're not doing any new material. I will be in the classroom, but it is going to be a work session. So if you're looking to come in and work in the lab, we'll be there. I'll probably only be there for as long as there's somebody there. So if you are planning on coming in, if you come in around noon, I'll be there. But if by say 1 o'clock nobody's there, I'll probably go on to get ready for my next class. The next week is a work session. We'll post that in the shell and in Discord as well. But next week is a work session. I figure everybody can use all the time they can get to finish up their assignments. What's your final hand-in date for your projects? No clue. Might want to find out, eh? If if you have it ready, I think I suggested next Wednesday evening I could start looking at them. But if somebody has extended it beyond that, then in a day or two. Okay, so for me, I'd like to start marking them because I have to turn the marks around pretty quickly and get them in for the following Tuesday. So your final project part 2 for me is due Wednesday, 14th. Okay, let's get back to our discussion on motion matching. Have you guys used the one-click retargeting at all on any of the motion that you've captured in the lab to retarget a different skeletal object asset in your game? Cool. Okay, let's talk about our post search database. So the post search database is kind of where the magic stuff happens. And what we're going to do is add animations to it. And this is sort of the selection of animations that the game engine is going to choose from. And we're going to create an animation blueprint that says use this post search database. So let's add some animations from our selection of animations. So under character survivor in the retargeted animations, we could start dragging in some of these, and I'm just going to drag one in, and we can see nothing's happened. And if I highlight it, I've got a static one where the character's just wavering a little bit, but with it highlighted, you can see the characters in there. So this, if we use this post search database, there's only one choice for the engine, and it's one. So let's go make it a little more interesting. Let's add some more. And I'm just going to go for broke here and add all of them. Depending on your system, you may or may not want to do this. Or, as we'll see in here, there are several animations that we're not going to use right away because we're not implementing crouch. But you can see here as I highlight these, the different animations back up, forward, if I was to select them all, you can see all the different animations that the engine can choose from. Going back to the beginning here, play, you can see if your character was moving in any direction, all of these in here, the engine could choose from any one of these. But I happen to know that we're not going to use the jump right now. We're going to do jump separately. So if there were animations in here related to jump, I've just filtered up by jump. I can take these out. I've just highlighted them and deleted them. I'm going to clear that filter. We still have a whole bunch in here. So there's also, if we look, crouching, and we're not implementing crouching in our logic. So if I look at these, I like to pull these out because if I leave them in, when the player stops, you'll sometimes see it moves into a crouching position just because the game engine has chosen to use that. So I'm going to pull these out of here as well. So I filtered for crouch, highlighted all the crouch ones, and we're just going to delete those, remove the filter, and we still have lots of different animations. So these are all the different animations that the game engine will be able to choose from based on its trajectory calculation. So I'm going to save this. And that's our pose search database, a list of animations to choose. Close it. Back in our character here. And you may recall in our character that we have the skeletal mesh selected, but we don't have an animation blueprint. The animation blueprint is the part that controls how the character moves, and our character still doesn't move very well. Well, it moves, it's just not animated. Let's go and create our animation blueprint. So we're going to right click and say animation, and we can pick animation blueprint here. Or if we pick the skeletal asset and say create, we can create animation blueprint, and it just automatically selects the skeleton that we chose. So ABP survivor. So we've been here before. We did our blend space, and when we did our blend space discussion, we actually had the blend space driving this. We had state machine when we did our character, and when we did just the NPC, we just had a state machine controlling this output pose. For this, we're going to do something very similar, but we're going to use the pose search databases instead of the blend machine. So we need to grab two variables and create two items from the trajectory component and the movement component and create variables out of those. So with the on owner here, we're going to drag out so if I drag out from here and do movement, component, and I'm going to get the trajectory. Doesn't look right. Give me 1 second, guys. I am drawing a blank here. When live demos go bad, eh? And we're going to tempt fate. We're going to actually open up the other copy here. I think it was in Motion 2. We'll see how well the Threadripper handles this. So we've got OBS running, we've got Discord running, got a NVIDIA filter running, and we'll have 2 projects going here. So this is my demo project from last night. I always like to pre-run the lessons so I don't run into what I just ran into. So under ABP Survivor, graph, trying to remember this piece here that I did last night that made forecasting to the character. So I'm going to close this project. Okay, so back in our project, let me stop leading you astray. We're going to cast to BP cats driver project. Here we're going to get the trajectory component. Character trajectory and get character movement. And in this case, we're getting the character movement variable. We want to actually promote both of these to okay, so we're setting up 2 variables for character movement and trajectory movement, and we're going to use this trajectory movement variable to drive the animation blueprint over here, much the way we did with the speed variable in the blend space. Okay, so following along with our script, we're going to drag out from the pose and add a pose history node, and then we're going to add the PSDs. So let's add the motion matching. There are a number of them here, so you want to make sure you get the motion matching animation option here. And we're going to select the PSD that we created. And we don't want to drive it connect directly here. We're going to do a pose history node. We use a pose history node. We're going to connect this. And the trick here is this trajectory piece. We're going to right click on it and we're going to bind it to the character trajectory. So this right here is the variable that we've set up here in the event graph set character trajectory here. That's what we're binding to in the atom graph here. So we're right clicking. Here we're saying character trajectory, good match. And you can now see the character is reverted to or changed to from the A pose to an idle pose. So we're going to file that, save it. We come into game. Our character's still not in the animation. Anybody even think of why it's not in the animation? We're missing one step. In our actual character, remember we'd set up the character, we set the blueprint up, set the skeletal mesh, but we didn't because we hadn't set up the animation blueprint. We need to set the animation blueprint up, and we're going to tell it to use the ABP survivor. You can now see characters in the idle pose for us. File, save. Now as the character runs, turn on the controller here. So it's got different movements compared to our character before, and based on our trajectory, game engine is choosing the best. Now I've got my controller going here, and you can just see the character's movement is a little more fluid or dynamic, or I don't know, different. Game engine is choosing which one to use based on that pose search database. If there were particular movements that I didn't like, I could remove them from the pose search database, or ones that I wanted to add, I could add them. So that is our pose search database set up just for basic walking. We had the pose search. Oh, we should have created a normalization that may help with the smoothing. So under motion matching, normalization set. So PSNS underscore survivor here. Takes one element, take our PSD created, and this should help normalize things a little bit with our move. A bit better. So normalize this, take some of the edges. Okay. What you might have noticed though is that when our character jumps, they don't. So if I jump here, there's no jump animation. I took the jump animations out of there. It doesn't recognize the jump animations very well in that one post search database. So the quick and easy answer is to create a second pose search database for jumping, and then control when it jumps. So let's start by creating the new pose search database. So we created one, PSD for survivor run walk. So let's do animation, motion matching, pose search database. We're going to map it to the same schema. This is PSD underscore survivor jump. In here, we want to add jumping animations. So we're going to go to survivor animations. We can scroll through this list and find the jumping ones, or we can filter. So we'll filter for anything that says jump. I'm going to highlight these jump ones. Now if I highlight these, you'll see the various jump animations that a couple of different jumps, jump in the air, jump land, static jump pose, a couple of different ones. I'm going to save this. So now we have this PSD survivor jump. So if we go into our animation blueprint, we simply need to add another one of these and control when it's choosing to jump or run. And you remember from our example with the blend space that the character movement component has an option for when it's falling. I think we called it is in air. Did that. So if we go over to the event graph, in our case, we got the character movement. We also want a Boolean here. Is in air. And from the character movement, I'm going to see, I think it's called falling. It's falling. So when the character is falling, to drag this out, set. We just want to make sure that we're doing a set here. Determines jump state. So over in our actual animation graph, we're going to copy the motion matching node. So Control C, Control V, paste it in here. And instead of doing the survivor run walk, we'll do the survivor jump. And now we just need to control which of these two it's running. That's done with a blend pose by Boolean. So blend pose by bool. I going to structure this just a little bit different. I'll break this here. We're going to take this into the A channel, this into the B channel, just so that it's not crossing over. We're going to take the is in air. We'll run it through not. I want to invert it, so we're inverting it. So that when it's not in the air, it's going to run the true pose. Okay, so we have motion matching walk run, and we have the post search database for walk run, and we have the post search database for jumping. This blend pose by Boolean is going to use the is in air variable to determine whether, and it's inverted, whether it's choosing the jumping or running one, and it's going to feed the pose history based on trajectory for the walk run, and then it's going to character animation. So now if we jump, we now have a jump animation. And when the character walks off the edge of the world, or the edge of this particular cube, they are in air, so they go into a jump pose and land pose. So that's a recap on our motion matching. Any questions on one-click retargeting or motion matching that we've covered? So the process is not that undifferent from what we did with the blend space, but instead of using the blend space in the animation blueprint, we're using the post search databases in here. And your same project can mix and match, so you could use the blend spaces on the NPC if you wanted a simpler animation style on the NPC, but in maybe your main character, you want different animations. You can control which blend spaces get used. Saw this one based on the Boolean. There are other options as well. I'll post this project up on GitHub as well so that you can have a look at it firsthand. Sort of recapping from the top, we started a third person project. With the third person project, we then migrated in a character that was our survivor character. We asset migrated all the animations from the that we wanted from the Lyra project in as well. Once we had the assets in there and the character, we did a one-click retarget on the assets to match the new character skeleton and saved those in that particular character. Once those were retargeted, we enabled the trajectory plugin in the project. Project restarts. With that enabled, we were then able to create the post search schema, tie it to the new character survivor character skeleton. Then we created the post search database, added the animations that we wanted. In my case, I added all of them, and then I filtered and took out the crouching and jumping ones, and we're left with just a bunch of the movement ones. Once those were created, we created the post search normalization set, which just sort of helps smooth things out a little bit. We had to go back into our character and tell our blueprint character to use the animation blueprint. And then in the animation blueprint, we created two variables for the character movement and the character trajectory. We used those in the animation graph to control which was being played. We later went back in, created a Boolean for whether the character was falling, and chose to have two different post search databases running. So this was sort of magic part of it, which having created the two post search databases using the blend poses by Boolean and using the characters is in air attribute to which of the two. So I think that's a wrap on what I wanted to cover today. We talked a bit about Fab, reminded you about migrating assets. So we talked a bit about Fab, about migrating assets. We also mentioned that you might want to get into Fab before the end of December and just click on that accept all Quixel mega scans, and that way next term if you need some assets from mega scans, you'll have more to choose from. There will always be some for free on Fab, but this just ensures that some of the Quixel assets remain open to you and free beyond the calendar year. We talked a little bit about collapsible items in the HUD, showed you again about the HUD, showed you how to quickly align some items using the horizontal and vertical boxes, the trick or idea to use it on the outliner instead of just in the designer may make selecting them easier, and you can change the order a bit easier. And then we got into talking about motion matching and I think that's it. Those are the big items that I wanted to cover today. Oh, let's look in our notes because there were two things that we haven't talked about explicitly, and you may want to actually do those. So just let me open those up and then I'll put them back on the screen. Flip you back to the screen. A couple of things that we I think we talked about in class briefly, but obviously the debugging stuff, if you wanted to keep your debugging going. Um, Packaging, you have some options to help optimize your packaging. If you have development levels that you don't want to be final shipping, there are ways to set which levels get included, and that can help minimize the size of your shipping project. For the purposes of your delivery to me, that's usually not a concern, but sometimes you'll get into competitions or you're packaging for a mobile platform and you want to minimize the size of that package that's going out, depending on how it's delivered. An over the wire update to a mobile platform, you might want to minimize how much data is transferred. So you can actually go in and change things like you see here on the screen in the packaging option under project settings, which levels get included in the packaged game. Obviously, all the ones you want to play, but if you have test or development levels that don't need to be shipped, exclude them in here. The one that we have talked about too is shipping. You change it from debug development mode to shipping mode. It can take out a bunch of the debug libraries and stuff. That minimizes or reduces your package size as well. Also, all of the print debug messages that you send to the screen aren't included in that shipping version as well. Um, this is a big word of caution. There's an option under Reference Viewer to start removing unused assets. I would stray away from that and I would err on the side of only adding assets that you want to use. Using a reference viewer can tell you an asset is or isn't used, but there are some options in here to bulk remove unused assets. I would definitely not use them without having a good, solid, proven backup, as you can really make a mess of your project. The debug, turning off debug statements, icons and splash screens. So we can add customized icons and splash screens in the project settings. So if we look at our project here under project settings, and you can do this by platform because platforms have different requirements. If we come down to platforms, so if you're doing Android device, you have a bunch of different Android options, and then you have here a variety of different icons, and these icons reflect the different screen resolutions for your different Android versions and devices, tablets, and phones, and versions of phones. Similarly, um, different splash screens for the orientation, and these would simply be bitmaps or PNGs based on the platform. So if we come down and look at Windows, our platform of choice, we have the splash screens that we can update. And we also have the game icon, and this would just take a standard regular Windows ICO file. You could use something like GIMP to generate the ICO, or the number of different developer tools have access to on creation to take a graphic, create your icon, and this is the icon that will appear on the user's desktop. This is the splash screen that gets displayed, and if you hover over these, it'll tell you the default size there. You'll see the dimension 720 by 370, and you could simply click on this, pick a new option, graphic, and import it in the project. And you can have splash screen and the editor splash screen are different. I think we touched on those a couple of weeks back, but in case we didn't, just a quick recap on those, and they do actually appear in our notes here. A screenshot with it, and if we look down here, icons and splash screens, video on it. The packaging size reduction discussion here, the icons and splash. So I think that is a wrap. So a short class today, give you lots of time to work on your projects. Wanted to really make sure we recap that motion capture in person and got that done, as well as the one-click retargeting. Fab's a good thing to have as well. And if you're at downloading assets, remember to download the assets into a Scratch project and only add the assets. So I haven't posted marks for assignment 4. I will finish marking those assignments and we'll start posting hopefully by the end of the weekend. So by Sunday evening, you should start seeing the marks go up for assignment 4. The midterm assignments were posted. I've got a couple of these that I have to just make sure which group you're associated with and finalize those. So if you don't have a mark on the midterm, send me a quick message and let me know which group you're associated with. I will update the mark accordingly. Any questions? Are you good to go and get working on your final projects? Okay, good. You're all good. Thank you. So if we're not seeing anything else here, I'm going to end the session. Once the session is remuxed, I will post it up onto YouTube and I will add it to our um, link in our class, and I will also add it to the playlist that I linked up, and I'll post in Blackboard the playlist there as well if you want playlist for future reference. You won't have access to the Blackboard shell, so just grab a copy of that link and tuck it away somewhere. I see somebody's typing here. I'll just wait a second. Do remember to get up and look at this stuff on GitHub if you want to see some of these. Yep, Keaton, if you want to send me a message directly, we can have a discussion about what the animation challenge is. I will end this, close the room, and then we can probably do it just here in Discord. So I'll stay on Discord after this, Keaton, and message me. Not seeing any other questions. We're going to close the room. I will be in the classroom next week. There is no new material. I'll post in Blackboard as well. But I will be in the classroom for the first hour or so if anybody